welcome to Device.com's Indie Binge. My name's Joel Higgins, staff writer and editor for Device.com, and today we're taking a look at Realm of the Mad God. Realm of the Mad God is a co-op action RPG developed by Kabam and Wild Shadow Studios. This game's a throwback to the 8-bit titles of yesteryear, allowing players to immediately jump in the action without the distraction of too much storyline. The game touts over 1 million players and is currently number 9th on Steam's top free-to-play titles. Realm of the Mad God allows players to play cooperatively with thousands of others. Players can also join guilds and engage with their friends in real-time action combat. Each player levels, as is par for the course in RPGs, but what's different about Realm is that once that character you've been leveling for 10 days dies, it's dead. You can't get it back. It is permanently dead. Permadead, as they call it. You have to start over with a new character, which you can create from the choice of one of 13 different classes. Now, you've got your standard classes like rogues and wizards, but there are also some surprises in there like the trickster and the necromancer. Each class is balanced and fun with a very small learning curve. Now, in order to unlock all of the 13 classes, you've got to level up each class. The way it works is this: you play as a class, you reach a certain level, and that unlocks a different class. You play as that class and reach a certain level, and that unlocks a different class. Now, all of this is very well laid out in the game and very easy to understand, but it does sort of make leveling in Realm something you don't usually see it as in RPGs. Leveling in Realm of the Mad God is sort of its own currency. The other currencies in this title are gold, which can be bought with real-world money, a concept which I'm sure we're all completely foreign to in free-to-play games, and fame, which is actually pretty interesting because it's granted to you when you die, and the more epically you die, the more fame you get. Realm of the Mad God has been live since June 20th, 2011, and it has a very active player base. We found the combat to be responsive and engaging, but sometimes the limitations of our classes left us feeling a little bit bored. This feeling was quickly somewhat negated, however, by the fact that, well, we died. We died a lot. We died over and over and over and over again. And every time you die, if you've reached a certain milestone, you get the chance to come back as a different class and have a different experience and playstyle. The variety of enemies in this game is truly jaw-dropping. You never really know what kind of monster you're going to come up against next, or what kind of loot they're going to drop. Now, if you're a fan of storyline, this isn't the title for you, as the only discernible story we found had something to do with a mad god named Oryx, who is the hardest boss in the game and is the reason all those little snakes keep shooting you in the face with venom. That being said, we honestly didn't care too much about the story, as just staying alive and getting better loot was consuming enough for us. Now, you can't really talk about this game and not discuss the emotional impact it has on old school gamers. Playing this game brought us back to a simpler time in gaming, when everything was about the mechanics and the story was almost entirely peripheral. That being said, those games of yesteryear were played on a console, so the experience here is kind of incomplete. Although with Steam's big picture, which allows PC games to be played on a TV with a controller, currently in beta testing, that may not be the case for long. Dungeon design in this title is impeccable. To get into a dungeon, you've got to kill certain enemies that randomly open portals allowing access. Now, that portal is open for a limited time and anyone can jump in and go nuts. One of the first dungeons you're likely to come across is the Pirate Cave. Now, this dungeon has a simple layout, a decent variety of enemies, and houses Dread Stump the Pirate King, a 800 HP boss who damages players with blades and cannonballs, but who drops tier 2, 3, or 4 weapons, or tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 armor. Now, in the Pirate Cave, players can also loot something called Pirate Rum, which blurs the screen upon consumption, similar to the inebriated effect you've got in other RPGs like World of Warcraft. The retro styling in Realm is great, the combat's engaging, the dungeons are a blast, and the character mechanics and variety are spot on. But while there is a tutorial, the game doesn't do a whole lot to prepare the new player for what they're about to stumble into, making the learning curve on the game as a whole kind of daunting, even though the individual elements are pretty easy to catch on to. Apart from that, while we enjoyed the permadeath feature immensely early on, and we really liked the idea of it philosophically, we found it to be more annoying as we progressed into higher levels and more varied classes. If you've got a slower internet connection or an older computer, there will be moments in this game where death is entirely unavoidable, simply due to lag. And while that's only annoying in other RPGs, in Realm it means your character is lost forever. Still, the upside here is that the gameplay is so addictive that releveling a character, or just starting from scratch with a new class, is actually an enjoyable experience. And frankly, if you're running on decent hardware and a moderate internet connection speed, we didn't find too many circumstances where death in the game was an absolute certainty. Even when you're swarmed by monsters, you can always port back to the game's central safe haven, the Nexus, thus removing yourself from the circumstances that would have otherwise killed you. The major downside of this title is its repetitiveness, however, which is largely due to the fact that there's no larger point to playing it other than to play it. Without a storyline, there are no compelling emotional pulls to get you to keep going, apart from knowing you'll be able to brag about the epic loot you got to all the new players in the Nexus. Now, the addition of a variety of classes and dungeons somewhat negates this repetition, but we still felt it after playing for a relatively brief amount of time. Still, the bottom line here is that these issues and these criticisms could all be solved in a patch. In our opinion, the core of this game is very strong and shows enormous potential for future expansion. Because of all that, we're going to give Realm of the Mad God 4.5 arthritic thumbs out of 5. Please be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe, as well as check out Device.com for an interview with Realm of the Mad God's designer, Willem Rosenthal, link in the description below. Also, take a look at the description for a link to the Realm of the Mad God wiki and website. I've been Joel Higgins for Device.com, and we'll see you next time on Indie Binge.